is about to open wide.
Welcome to the show, everyone.
Beautiful.
What are we going to talk about today? Bringing Pandora's box to you tonight. We're bringing Pandora's box to you. Don't be frightened. What will we talk about? Well, I don't know. But I have an idea.
What's that?
But we'll make it fun for you and for us. I'm liking the smooth, jazzy, loungy sound. Oh yeah.
So smooth.
It occurred to me that we haven't done a musical intro in a while.
So damn long.
So here it is. Laundry intro tonight. So here it is.
Here it is.
Oh yeah. Loungy. Welcome to Pandora's Box, everyone. Just fancy like doing a little impromptu musical intro for a while. Always used to really enjoy doing them, and then like it wasn't a conscious decision, but we just haven't done one in ages. So I thought, well, I haven't like prepared anything or anything, but we'll just see what happens.
I like
really.
it, man. We're getting back in the rhythm of things again. I feel like we're doing weekly pods here and there.
Yeah.
And we're back with the musical intro. I feel like we've just gone back a year. So
yeah, definitely like more regular than we have been. So that's cool. So yeah, and on that fact as well, on the fact of just bringing back stuff to how we used to do it, already compiled some interesting quickfire facts.
Quickfire facts.
You all, so we can start off with some quickfire facts today. I should say, by the way, you are listening to Pandora's Box on AW Radio. You might also be listening to us on Spotify or YouTube. However you listen to us, we appreciate you. We love you. And yeah, if you're listening to us, say on like YouTube, just remember that you can listen to us as well, either on AW Radio every Monday night at 9 p.m. That's when we first come out every week. And remember that you can check us out on Spotify or however you listen to us. Remember, you've got options. All right.
Do you know what we should do?
What?
Is it Halloween?
Right.
Where like the more times you watch it, the more things you notice. Like you'll see, it's not Freddy and
Michael
Halloween,
Myers.
Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Michael Myers like appears in different windows and stuff, and you sort of notice that. I think we should have that on the radio, and then I like different ways of media. So the more times you listen to us, you might like pick up something that you missed the first time.
Oh, okay.
Some Easter eggs.
Yeah. And it's funny you said that actually, because your older brother Drewster and Bullwinkle, I remember we watched the first Halloween movie round obviously the house that you never went to, but your mum's old house down in North Street. I remember me and Josh watched Halloween for the first time together when we were really young. I wonder if Josh would remember this. And I remember there was like several scenes where, say, like, there'd be like a lady in her kitchen, and then you'd see like in a kitchen window that Michael Myers was like staring through the window, and it's obviously really menacing when you notice. But Josh didn't notice them often, and I would like notice them, and I was like, "Did you see that?" Then like his face was in the window, and Josh was like, "No." So yeah, that's like that can be our equivalent. And obviously, yeah, we're on like Instagram and TikTok as well. We used to be on Facebook, but then something weird meta-related happened, and now we just can't log into the Facebook.
Zuck took us down.
Yeah, Zuck just fully just took us down. Yeah, it just like unlinked the Instagram from the Facebook, and now I can't get into the Facebook, so I don't know what's going on there. So the Facebook is dead, but Instagram and everything else is still...
The pod is alive.
Yeah, the pod is still alive, even if the Facebook is dead.
I've got to say, I'm really excited for this week's episode, man. We were speaking yesterday, of course, doing one of our other shows, which the listeners should listen to if you get a chance.
Russian Roulette. The show where anything goes.
Absolutely.
It's not even us that does it, though, is it? It's
no, our good friends.
Bertram Codsworth and DJ Chadwick Beefcake.
Yeah, all the beefheads out there, you'll know what we're talking about.
The beefheads. Yeah.
But I'm really excited because we were chatting loads yesterday, of course, and there's so much topics that we're going to go into today that I'm really looking forward to. So it's going to be a great episode.
But what better to kick off the show with than some torture?
Oh, my.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you about some pretty just like crazy tortures that have methods of punishment and torture that have been given out to people over the thousands of years.
Cool.
Some of them are pretty crazy. This isn't my personal. I was going to say my personal favourite list, as if like I've administered loads of torture to people and I have my own personal favourites, but. I remember my granddad. This is such a my granddad sort of thing to do. I remember he gave me a book on public executions.
Nice.
It was something like torture and public executions, and he gave it to me probably about 15 years ago now. And it's actually a really interesting book. So I've got it at home, and there's some that's obviously goes really in depth throughout the whole book. But
as morbid as it is, it's a really fun conversation, and a fun topic.
It's a fascinating thing to think about, and I think to imagine being, say, like a criminal or just anybody that that has been. So I expect a lot of these people I expect were innocent.
Yeah.
And then being told that you were going to be like either executed or tortured via one of these methods is just brutal.
Have you ever been to one of those like wax museums where they have like the like torture wax museums, where it's almost like takes you through the history of torture?
I have.
And there's like all these looking like real people like going through these horrible torture methods. Yeah. As like morbid as it sounds, is also like one of the funnest places you can go to because it's so interesting.
Yeah,
it's like being in Disneyland for a kid.
Is it still called the Chamber of Horrors in London?
It might be. That rings a bell.
I remember my dear mother took me to the Chamber of Horrors in London, but this was probably back either like late 90s or early noughties, so it was a long time ago now. So I don't know if it's probably changed since then. But I remember because we went to Madame Tussauds, and then right next door, at least at the time, my memory serves, was the Chamber of Horrors.
That's cool.
And you'd like go underground, and I remember you'd like walk through this like guillotine, and it would like go, but it had like sensors, so it would know to stop like right above your head or something like that.
That's so cool.
Something like that, yeah. But anyway, let's listen to some crazy forms of torture and execution from throughout history. So one of Asia's torture methods was crushed by an elephant. Yes, this weirdly specific method of execution was common in areas where elephants were naturally found, primarily in South and Southeast Asia. Elephants were often trained in order to ensure the trampling was as brutal as possible. Lovely. There was a torture method in China known as Ling Chi, which is also known as slow slicing or the death by 1,000 cuts. It was a method. Oh, it does, doesn't it? Imagine just slow slicing. It's that one. That's the worst. Yeah. It was a method of torturous execution practiced in China. The condemned were tied to a post, and bits of skin and limbs were gradually removed one by one, usually culminating in a final cut to the heart or decapitation. It was used as early as the 10th century and continued for nearly 1,000 years before it was banned in 1905.
Jesus, man. It's brutal.
The fact that it says that basically gradually bits of your skin and limbs were removed slowly until eventually either like your heart or like one of your other internal organs were damaged enough.
And 2005 is not that long ago.
No, sorry, 1905.
Oh, 19. I was going to say 2005.
Did I say 2005?
I thought so, but I could have been wrong.
One of us is wrong, but it doesn't matter, man. We're all wrong sometimes. It doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter.
Imagine I get put to the 1,000 slices now for that mistake.
Yeah, just for that. Yeah. Obviously, one that's become quite famous because of the Vikings TV show is the Blood Eagle. The Blood Eagle comes from Nordic legends of Viking executions. The condemned's back was slashed so as to give access to the ribs, which were then broken and twisted upwards to look like wings while the person was still alive, thus giving it the name the Blood Eagle. To add injury to injury, salt was then poured into the wounds, and as a final blow, the lungs were pulled out and draped over the rib wings for effect, making the person some sort of like twisted monstrosity, like art type sort of thing, but they would still be alive.
It does amaze me, that one. It amazes me that they kept them alive whilst doing it. Like, for such a brutal culture as well, to be that I don't know, specialised in
oh yeah, because it was almost like, I mean, you'd have to have almost like a surgeon's knowledge, wouldn't you, of like a human anatomy and stuff to like keep someone alive while you were like breaking their ribs and everything like that, and like taking out their lungs and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, crazy, man. Like, yeah, it's mad how creative human beings are. But even when it becomes to like you think of creative, you think of like, say, like an artist drawing a picture, or like a musician crafting a song. You don't necessarily think of like creating
the Blood Eagle.
Like how someone's just coming up with like a really like just crazy way of torturing someone. Another one is called keel hauling. This was a type of punishment specifically for sailors, which was dreamt up by the Dutch Navy in the late 16th century. Offenders were tied with rope and dragged underwater from one end of the ship to the other. Many people that were subjected to this were drowned or died of internal injuries. But in theory, it was meant more as like a punishment that wasn't meant to be fatal, but it just often would end up in the death, which is like not surprising, really, is it? Do you know what I mean? As a bonus, men who were punished by keel hauling were often cut mercilessly by barnacles, sharp barnacles that were stuck to the ship's bottom, and carried the scars with them for life if they lived. That is
Jesus.
Yeah. So just for people that are like confused when it says like offenders were tied with a rope and dragged underwater from one end of the ship to the other. So like literally, so they'd be dragged from underneath the boat. So there'd be like a rope that would be going from underneath the boat from like lengthways, and they would drag them across the bottom of the boat while the ship was going. But as I said, like, you know, there'd be lots of barnacles on them, and it would just like often rip them to shreds.
Man, the one I always thought was horrible in The Last Kingdom.
Right.
You know, when they tie him to like the front of the boat. Is that in Last Kingdom?
Yes.
Where they tie him to the front of the boat, and the whole time he's just like getting hit by the waves.
That was a real torture. There's one very similar. That was a terrible mode of transport. Is that what you just said? Yeah, man. I mean, I've been by taxi, by bus, by train, but that is a terrible form of transport, mate. That is. No, well, yeah, it is.
It is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, out of all the ways to travel by boat, that's definitely the worst. It's
not the way you want to do it.
So, how much is it for just like standard seat? Oh, do I get a discount if you just tie me to the front of the boat? And that? Yeah, there's one similar to that we'll talk about in a bit, but worse.
Ooh,
even worse. Yeah.
An even worse mode of transport.
But yeah, I mean, it literally is, because it's still like boat related. Another one, which is like a simple one, yet still an insanely horrible one. Boiling. You know, nowadays boiling alive is a fate reserved for shellfish.
Yes.
But centuries ago, it was a common method of execution, all the way from East Asia to England. The condemned would typically be stripped and then placed in a vat or pot of boiling liquid, usually either water, oil, or tar. Oh, I don't know why, but I almost think like oil or tar is the worst.
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
Because you know that sizzle, you know, like a deep fryer when like, you put food in it and it's like tss, and it instantly like sizzles. Like, imagine that being your body. Imagine that being your body.
Even like the feeling of when you like, you know, when water's a bit too hot and you touch it, and it's just horrible and your finger hurts. Yeah. Imagine that just being dumped into horrible.
It's a horrible.
See, with stuff like this, it's almost indescribable, the pain.
Yeah, like most people have experienced, you know, at some point like a broken bone or a dislocation. You know, we've all like cut ourselves, maybe have a nasty cut or you burnt yourself on the oven. All of these things obviously hurt. Or, you know, like, you know, recently I ruptured a hamstring, like last month. I think it was last month. You know, that really hurt at the time. But at the same time, like, everything's relative. Yeah. Like, compared to, like, the concept of, like, these things that we're talking about, awful.
I do wonder with a lot of these, like, people's pain threshold. Surely there is a certain point where it's like, there must be a max level of pain you can get to.
Well, they say, don't they, that, like, a lot of people will pass out from pain. Yeah. If pain gets to a certain level, they will pass out. And some people will even die of shock. So you'll die of shock because the pain's too much for you. Your body's gone into shock, you'll die, you know, or Yeah, or you'll pass out from the pain.
Yeah.
But I guess if you're a really tough SOB, then and you're not the sort of person that's going to pass out, and you're not the sort of person that's going to die of shock, then you're in for a brutal ride.
That's the worst way to be.
Well, then again, saying that, I mean, again, it depends what we're talking about. If you're literally boiled from head to toe in like a vat of tar or oil, then obviously you are going to die. It's not like you can put up with that pain.
Yeah.
But while you are alive, I guess it's just a matter of time until your body gives in. But yeah, it would be an awful couple of minutes. Do you reckon you could last a couple of minutes? Because it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like, I mean, usually, you know, you would have to have one of your serious internal organs damaged to want you to die. Do you know what I mean? So like, right, so like, obviously ways that you could die, right? Makes sense, right? Obviously, say like a bullet to the head, you kill your brain, boom, your brain is our supercomputer, right? You turn that off, it's like pulling out the jack out of the back of the PC monitor or whatever, right? Your lungs, obviously we need our lungs to breathe. If you get shot in the lungs and then your lungs fill up with blood or whatever, you cannot, or you just cannot successfully breathe anymore, you will die. You know, you'll suffocate to death. If your heart is damaged, so it can't pump blood around the body anymore or whatever, then obviously, you're going to die. You know, or, you know, one of your arteries are really badly hit, so you bleed out, you know, your blood's just squirting out everywhere, you die of blood loss, right? But if you think about, like, boiling... Yeah. None of those things are technically happening, are they?
No.
At least not for a long while.
And it's a different kind of burn to, like, fire, isn't it? So...
Yeah.
I don't know, that is a really good question.
I wonder how long you could survive.
Yeah.
I have heard that with burning, there's obviously a matter of time until your nerve endings, like, after a while, your nerve endings would be destroyed, and then you stop feeling pain. Which obviously would be a saving grace. But how long would it take for that to happen? And how long would you still be alive? Just because you wouldn't feel pain doesn't mean it wouldn't be horrific.
Would your blood start to boil?
I guess it would, probably after a while, Everything would start to boil. And then so once that happened, I guess once your heart and your lungs and stuff like that started essentially cooking, because you would be like you know, like the same way when
that's a great point.
Deep fry a fish, or, you know, deep fry a chicken or some chips. I guess, you know, it's like, the whole thing's cooking through. Like, I wish, once you started cooking through,
I don't think you'd make it past a minute. I don't reckon.
It'd be interesting, wouldn't it? I reckon that maybe a person of the strongest fortitude could make 1 minute. But it'd be interesting to know.
You need pretty tough skin, wouldn't you? I think a bigger person would have more chance than a little person.
I wonder if there's been like tests on that. But then how would you even administer those tests?
Yeah, I guess, you know what? I'm sure there probably has been.
I bet historically, back when these things happened, there were people keeping record of like how long people would stay alive. So we'll look that up in a bit. We'll look that up
that'd be interesting to find out.
Once we finish these facts on torture, we'll look up if what's the longest anyone's survived of boiling. Anyway. So what did we say? So we got as far as saying, it would usually be boiled in water, oil or tar. Or for a more gruesome experience, the offender could be placed in a cool liquid and then heated to boiling slowly. Records from the reign of Henry VIII show that some people were boiled for up to 2... It's answered our question. For up to 2 hours before they finally died.
Oh my God, that's so much worse than I thought.
2 hours! Just putting them on a slow boil, you know?
I would have thought you would have had... See, my guess would have been that if you burn yourself or by water, does your blood, like, your blood raises to the skin, right, to try and repair the healed skin?
What do you mean?
Like, if you get a burn,
right,
your blood rises to the top, so that it's... Is that right? Like, try and repair it. That's like... Is that why you get, like, boils and stuff? That would be my assumption.
I don't think your blood raises to the top.
Oh, right.
I don't think it's like that.
I would have thought you'd have had like a heart attack or something like blood related before 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm surprised. What you said about the blood boiling made sense to me.
Yeah,
and I would have thought that if your heart was trying to pump essentially boiling blood around the body.
Yeah,
I mean, apart from anything else, it would be burning your veins and your arteries.
That
were just trying to like pulse that around, you know, as they was going around the body. So surely that would like mess you up really quickly. But I don't know, maybe, as I said, I guess it depends how boiling the substance was as well. We're thinking like as boiling as lava, essentially.
Yes,
or maybe not as boiling as lava, but we're talking as like
proper boiling.
The highest boil that your hob could get.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas I guess in those days, maybe it was a bit harder to get up to like, you know, like reliably.
Yeah.
Get up to like a really, really high temperature. I don't know. This is another brutal torture method. I remember hearing about this one before. This is rat torture.
This is the worst.
Have you heard of this one before as well?
See, I remember a girl telling me this in an English class, and I remember she told me all about this, and I thought, that is the worst way I could ever imagine dying. This for me is like my like my magnum opus way of dying. I think this is the peak.
It's quite a creative way of killing somebody, but it's also quite terrifying. With rat torture, a hungry and or diseased rat would be placed in a bucket on the victim's bare stomach or chest. The bucket is then heated from the outside, and the agitated rat will then start to chew its way through the unfortunate person's flesh, and then through any organs it happens to encounter until it chews and bites and claws its way through your entire chest or stomach.
Jesus.
That is so savage, isn't it?
It's brutal.
Because
I think one of the worst bits of that is I can imagine that pain would last. I don't think you would perish straight away. I think that would be like quite a lasting thing.
Yeah.
So that's miserable.
Oh yeah, that would be a slow death, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It'd be a slow one.
Yeah.
And then hearing the rat just going as it's like clawing and biting.
Heat up the bucket as well. So
yeah, they said
trying to like get out.
Yeah, they heat up the bucket from the outside, so the rat's like literally fighting tooth and nail, literally, to like get its way out, and it's only got one way to go, and that's through you. That's brutal.
So bad.
Have you heard about the Chinese execution vans?
I haven't. No.
I think one of the things that's scary about this is it sounds almost like so clinical.
Yeah.
And it's horrible to think that like human beings are like typically emotional creatures that you'd like to think you'd like to think, I think, when dealing with other people, that you can reason with them. Now obviously that's not always the case, and we've all had experiences of dealing with people that, you know, for lack of a better term, are a-holes. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, there's like, you know, it's nice to think that you could like reason with someone, but there's something so cold and clinical about even the term execution van. Make your way to the execution van. But China has made capital punishment shockingly efficient. It's a little surprise, really, considering that China conducts the most executions per year of any country in the world.
Is that still?
Yeah. A variety of crimes are punishable by death, including tax fraud, arson, and prostitution.
Jesus.
Man, the Chinese don't mess about, do they?
They do not. They really do not.
Like, in the grand scheme of things, you'd think that, like, don't get me wrong, I mean, yeah, obviously it's bad to, like, you know, do a bit of tax fraud, but I mean, in this culture, I mean, we like comedians like Jimmy Carr that famously did a bit of, I mean, I don't know how pedantic you'd want to get with exactly what he did, whether you'd call it tax evasion or whatever. But
I think in China, man, I don't think they'd care.
Yeah, but it's mad to think that, like,
going in the van,
like if he was in China, then they would have killed him for that.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Or like even prostitution. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, like, certainly wouldn't advise any ladies I know to get into prostitution. yeah. But like the thought that like you would be like killed for that is pretty brutal. Mental. You know. Many executions in China are now performed in what are known as mobile execution units. They are vans that are equipped with restraints and drugs necessary for lethal injection. The vans, which look like typical police vans, have been on the road for about a decade now. There are dozens of them all over the country dispensing lethal justice closer to the scenes of crimes. Not only are they cheaper than the more traditional facilities, but Chinese officials say they are more humane than the other preferred method of execution in China, which is death by firing squad. Just imagine that, just seeing that outside your house, just parked up. That would be enough just to like keep you on the straight and narrow, wouldn't it? Yeah,
just seeing them around. It probably. Do you know what? That is probably like part of it.
Yeah, it's probably like the psychological terror, almost like keeping you in line, making you not want to like step a single like foot out of line.
See, would you, if you had to choose your own way of like death, right? If they were, you know, you were put on death row.
I would much rather die. You know, they said about like
firing squad.
Firing squad was like
completely
worse.
Agree.
I would much rather die by firing squad.
Completely agree. 100%. Rather than getting like injected with something
while you're like strapped down to a bed. It's almost like being abducted by aliens. You know, the whole idea that it's like almost like clinical and these like cold beings just like with masks on or whatever, just like just doing that to you. It's like,
I think like that and the guillotine, because it's just so instant, isn't it?
Yeah, I have to say as well, even though obviously it's like slower, I reckon hanging wouldn't be too bad.
No, electric chair would be bad.
Oh, that would suck.
Yeah.
You
it's crazy that's still a thing, isn't it? The electric chair. Am I right in saying that?
I'm not sure. It definitely, if it's not, it definitely was up until recently. I think it might be.
Yeah.
But if it's not, then it's quite recent that it was taken out.
Pretty crazy that would have been like almost at the time they would have thought that was the most humane way to go. I wouldn't want to go electric chair. No way.
No way. Here, like literally, like, and you can like smell your skin like frying. Yeah, that's pretty brutal. That is pretty brutal, man. Yeah, I wouldn't want that. I think like hanging, even though it'd be quite slow and obviously it'd be quite horrible. Don't get me wrong. The idea of being like, I don't know. It's like I don't reckon it would hurt that bad.
No,
it would be more like your natural shock of like, you know, your body just naturally resists certain things. So obviously you're going to like resist the hanging. Yeah. So I think that like, you know, but I think after however long it would be, like what, like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, I think you'd pass out from the loss of like oxygen to the brain. Yeah. And then at that point, you'd almost like die peacefully. Am I right in saying a lot of the time, like people's necks would have been snapped? Yeah, I was about to say it would have been quite instant that way as well. Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, there is obviously that. So it depends like how you're hung. Like if you're dropped from like 10 feet. Pardon me. Bless you. Thank you, my friend. Thank you, my friend. If you were dropped from a great height, yeah, you could break your neck and die instantly. But then if you were like more like gradually let go, then I guess you would like more like suffocate to death or whatever. But yeah, crazy anyway. I don't know. Even though it's slower, I don't think I like the idea of just like falling 10 feet and my neck just like snapping. No, I think I prefer that though. I think I'd prefer that to being like dropped slowly. I reckon. I think I'd enjoy dogging out everyone in the crowd watching me. Yeah, making a point while I was like slowly duffed. Yeah. Trying to pull like the most weird face I could. Just like yeah. Or just like trying to be like, just because like you've got nothing, literally nothing to lose. Maybe almost just try and be like so ridiculously stoical, but just almost like stare at everyone like, just to like creep them out. Just like make it look like you like it, like grin. Imagine that. They'd be like, oh my god. Or I'd just be like, coming to haunt you. Yeah. I'm going to haunt you. Beware! You'll regret this. Beware the darkness. You know, and just try and freak everyone out. Have that for coming to my execution. Yeah. Moving on to another brutal type of historical execution or torture. The gridiron. The gridiron was basically a large grill, but rather than being used for your steaks, it was used for roasting people. Oh, that long pig. As one might expect, it looked like an iron grid and was placed over fire or burning coals. Some people were even basted in oil first to ensure proper broiling. Oh my god, like a full-on sausage, man. Yeah, that's crazy. But at least, you know, what the one upside is in most societies, at least, the people were not eaten afterwards. Right. So that's at least, I guess, a little bit of a small consolation. Yeah. We're going to grill you like a sausage, but we won't eat you afterwards. We're not complete savages, you know? I bet there is at least one person out there was like, man, that looks a little bit good. Like, it's kind of good. Oh, Dave, I haven't been paid this month. There's just like, you know, perfectly char-grilled guy over here. Yeah. Smells quite good. Smells pretty good. Bit of long pig. Smells like barbecue. Yeah, man. Smells like it's like a frickin' hog roast. Yeah. Drawing and quartering. So let's have a look at this one, shall we? This one's quite famous in Britain, isn't it? Drawing and quartering is one of the most infamous methods of cruel and unusual punishment. The punishment was first doled out in England in the 13th century. The accused would be drawn, tied to a horse, and then dragged to the gallows, and then usually hanged and disemboweled or beheaded. Afterward, the condemned was quartered, i.e. they had his body split in quarters, sometimes by tying each limb to a different horse and having them run in opposite directions. Whoa. This punishment was reserved for those guilty of treason, and it was eventually abolished in 1867. Again, I feel like with stuff like that, it's almost to try and be a deterrent, isn't it? Yeah. It's mad that like all of that was done, like, you know, all at sort of at the same time. So obviously, there's different types of styles. So if we sort of, I'll go back through it again. So obviously, So it said that, you know, the accuser was drawn, tied to a horse, and then dragged to the gallows. So obviously, that would beat you up. You'd just be dragged, you know. So that would be really horrible. Obviously, it would beat you up. And then you'd usually be hanged for a short amount of time, but not hanged till death. Yeah. Then you would be disemboweled, but not in a way that would kill you. Sometimes after that, they would behead you. But if they didn't, behead you and they just hanged you and disemboweled you, by this point, obviously, you would already be in such an insane amount of pain and everything like that. But then if you weren't beheaded, then you would be quartered, which was when, your body was split in quarters, usually by tying each limb to an individual horse and then whipping the horses until they literally ripped your arms and your legs off.
Man, it's like the heptathlon version of torture, isn't it?
Yeah. Like you were in for an ordeal that day. Like, Jesus, man. Bad enough just getting dragged by the freaking horse, man, at the beginning.
That's just the start. That's the warm-up.
Yeah, for sure, man. This one's got an interesting name. This one almost sounds like a board game.
Okay.
Strapado.
It does.
Strapado. This is one of the rare forms of torture that wasn't actually meant to kill you. So it's an uncomfortable form of torture. In Strapado, the guilty party was strung up by the wrists with their arms behind their head in an awkward angle that would pretty much guarantee the dislocation of both of your shoulders. Then you would then have to hang by your two dislocated shoulders for basically as long as whoever had done that to you decided.
That's pretty bad.
If you were really light or for some reason very strong and your shoulders didn't dislocate, they would then add weights to your feet until your shoulders would eventually dislocate.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's pretty nasty, isn't it?
That is pretty bad.
It's thought to have originated in the medieval times during the Inquisition, and it was used right up into the 21st century. So that's literally really recently.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's pretty crazy, isn't it?
I remember you telling me and Drew to improve the grip strength to do the dead hangs off the stuff.
Yeah.
And I can think how much that sort of hurts after a little while. But man, imagine there was no way of even giving into it. No way of dropping.
And imagine your shoulders are dislocated at the same time.
Oh my God, that's bad.
The next one's interesting because unlike all the previous ones, this is a form of psychological torture as opposed to a type of intense physical torture.
I watched an interesting thing recently before you go into the fact of... it was a bunch of I think the idea was all different people from different versions of warfare. So it might have been the SAS, all the different
special ops.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And they asked the question of would you rather face physical torture or mental torture? And pretty much everyone just said physical.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just goes to show the power of the mind, the power of psychology, I guess, doesn't it? Yeah, this is insane. This is quite a harrowing tale because they get this in this account of what this torture is. They also give an example of a man and what he said after the torture, which is quite harrowing. Goes perfectly in line with what you just said. So this form of psychological torture is called white torture. Have you ever heard of this before?
Haven't, no.
It's very simple, but apparently is insanely effective. It's a type of psychological torture. It's a type of sensory deprivation in which a prisoner's cell, their clothes, and even their food are entirely white. Guards will all wear white from head to toe. The bright white lights are kept on 24 hours a day, and no words are spoken, and no other colour is seen other than bright white. It was documented in the case of Amir Fakrava. He was arrested in his native country of Iran and subjected to white torture non-stop for 8 months in 2004. While the physical pain of sensory deprivation is minimal compared to other types of torture, the psychological damage is beyond compare, apparently. Fakrava was quoted as saying when he released that he was no longer a normal person anymore and could no longer remember even the faces of his parents and most loved ones.
Wow.
That's crazy. Insane. The fact that he's sounds almost a bit sinister, just the fact that he said, I am no longer a normal person.
Yeah. I guess horrible.
Imagine that though, 8 months, right? You're in nothing but a white room. It's purely bright white, all the same tone as well, with bright white light, so you never know
when it's day or night. Yeah,
and it's just imagine trying to sleep with just your hand, your arms over your eyes, but just every moment, just seeing a bit of light creeping in, and then the guards just coming in all white and giving you nothing but white food.
Yeah, isn't that what mental institutions used to be like as well?
Oh yeah, they used to be really torturous.
How crazy
Put
is
you
that?
In a padded room,
you could have had what today could be easily diagnosed and treated.
Mental disorders, yeah.
And they would have just put you in this horrible, torturous environment.
Oh man, humans are nuts, aren't they?
Yeah.
The fact that some of the things that we used to do. Yeah, or another thing that people used to do, for either depression or PTSD or anxiety, is they put you in freezing cold baths and then leave you in the bath with all the windows open. You got to bear in mind as well, this is before central heating or anything like that. So the buildings would have already been really cold, especially in a country like Britain. And then to open all the windows up and then fill up a bath with ice and then leave somebody that's essentially struggling from mental conditions in an ice bath And then when they would take them out of the bath, they would wrap the person in cold cloth from the ice bath as well, and then they would leave them in the room with the windows open. So you'd be like, and it would take like hours and hours and hours. Well, probably longer than that for you to like actually get dry.
So bad.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So bad.
Or obviously you've got lobotomies as well, where people literally used to be like essentially cracked savagely on the back of the head. And there's cases of people, like for example men bringing their wives to lobotomists for say because they suffered from like mild anxiety or they were like naggers, right? And then they would get lobotomized afterwards, and apparently they would like never say a word again, and they were essentially almost like vegetabilized.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Mad, isn't it? Like they just sit in the chair like scormless, just like staring like for the rest of their lives. So crazy
that, and it like we were saying earlier with like how human nature is a thing, right? Where you expect people to be empathetic of each other, and you like you say, you expect to be able to reason with each other. But it's just so dark that like there were times throughout history and still today that there are people out there who don't have that empathy and almost don't have that what we would call common sense to like not do something like that.
I think it also should make us in this day and age try and be really grateful. Say for us as British citizens, right? We've grown up in Britain, you know, and we are relatively, compared to like 99.9% of people that have ever lived, so lucky. Like, you know, every civilization has their issues, every culture has their issues. Is Britain perfect? No, it's not. But I think really we should be, I think it's almost like ungrateful. If you have like talking about the things that we're talking about today, right?
It puts it in perspective.
And how China to this day have execution vans, and talking about, you know, these different types of psychological torture. Think about how in the past, you know, in Britain, the things that used to be done, that, you know, to cure mental disease, you know, putting you in a freezing cold bath with the windows open, you know, if you had a bit of depression, rather than actually giving somebody a bit of care or whatever. You know, to think that all of these things have happened in history, and then to think almost how good we've got it now relatively, I think to almost like make out that our current culture or society is like really bad is almost like really actually quite almost like spoilt, like and ungrateful. That's as far as I would go to say. Because like, again, like everything's relative. We were talking about how everything's relative earlier on in the show, but like, you know, we all have our problems, but are they some of the problems or the things we'll be talking about today? You know, it's all relative, isn't it? You know.
I know what I think would be like a real horrible way as well.
What's that?
This sort of like ties into what we're talking about, the White Room. I know there's a room out there that's like so quiet that if you can't be in there for like over a certain amount of time. It's like pitch black as well.
Oh, I've heard about this.
And you go in, and after a certain amount of time, you start like hearing your blood like pulsate through your body and like your ears because it's that quiet. And imagine like just being left in that room. That would make you go crazy.
It's interesting for me to even imagine, like, that I haven't experienced that level of quietness.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, like, you know, we all feel like we know what it's like to be in like a completely quiet room. You know, like say if you're like in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, or you're on a little staycation somewhere in this little Airbnb somewhere in the UK, but it's like out in the sticks somewhere. Not like with a road where like cars passing commonly. Like frequently, and then, you know, you feel like, you know, if you're in a room on your own and you're not making a noise and there's nothing there to make a noise, like a radio or TV or whatever, then you feel like that is like pure quietness. But I guess there's like levels to it.
Just a constant hum in the background, isn't it? That you never, we're so used to it that you'd never pick up on it.
Yeah.
But I would love to go into one of those rooms for maybe like 2 minutes and just be like, whoa, this is what quiet is, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah, me too, man. Me too.
Because people do that in like, they go away in almost sensory deprivation like retreats nowadays, don't they? Where you'd get put in like a tent or something like that.
It's usually tanks.
Tanks,
it's usually water tanks that are filled with enough salt that you'll float.
Right, yeah.
So you feel like the sensation of floating makes you almost feel like you're in space or something.
Yeah.
And they're completely dark. And the idea, as the name implies, is that it dulls all of your senses. So you're floating in this salt water in a tank. And you can't hear or see anything because it's pitch black. And the idea is that it's almost like this form of meditation. Some people obviously also combine it with things like, you know, marijuana use or or some other psychedelics.
Yeah, I think ketamine gets used for it.
Really?
I think in I've heard of in America, like almost ketamine treatment where they'll put you in a place like that, and it would just like, you'd just be like tripping out. Pretty insane.
I wonder how they administer that, because I remember hearing that ketamine is
it might be like a depression.
really bad for you.
I think it might be like a depression thing.
Really?
Like you have to be medically.
I think I'd like the sensory deprivation tank. If I had the opportunity to try one, I'd really like it.
Yeah.
The idea of, because I love water. I know you do too.
Yeah.
I know we're both big swimmers, big fans of swimming.
It does sound quite relaxing, doesn't it?
Yeah, I like the idea of, like, you know, when, like, and I think when you're in a sea, it is easier to float than when you're in, say, like a swimming pool. 100%. The salt does make you more buoyant.
Easier to swim for the same reason.
That's right. And the idea that you're in a tank with enough salt in it, the salt water is cultivated in a way that you can just completely float. Like stuff. I do like the idea of just almost being, and then shutting my eyes and almost just fully relaxing.
It's like flying, isn't it?
I don't think I'd want to take any substances though.
No, I agree.
I think that would almost like ruin it for me.
I agree.
I'd want to just shut my eyes and almost like zone out.
Yeah.
And then even if I ended up like falling asleep, I wouldn't care. Do you know what I mean? Just when I woke up again, or if just somebody like I said, right, come and check on me in like half an hour.
Yeah.
Or an hour, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because I think in situations like that, half hour and an hour can fly by, can't they?
100%.
You think that's quite a long time, but when you're actually like chilling like that and you're almost like semi-conscious, then yeah, it seems like it's like 10, 15 minutes. So yeah, I reckon as long as I had someone say like, right, come check on me in half an hour or an hour just to make sure I haven't like, I don't know, like fallen asleep and gone face down or something. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I think it would go one of two ways. I think you'd either find it goes really quick or really slow. Like you hear people when they lose track of time, don't they? I've seen like videos of almost people in sensory deprivation for like video challenges or whatever. And they might be like 2 days into the challenge and they'll be like, I think I'm like a week in. And like that quickly you can lose track of time. I think that's what would make like the White Room, like I bet that 8 months felt like 20 years.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet that was
like, it would have felt like a lifetime.
I bet that was freaking awful. I bet that was freaking awful.
Because people like I know not even full sensory deprivation, but almost like solitude camps that people will sign themselves up to as like a retreat, and they'll go and like stay in like whether it's like a cabin that's fully boarded up, no light gets in whatsoever. And the only like thing they get is like someone put the food through the door at like a certain point in the day, and it's just meant to like completely isolate you from the world. It's meant to be horrible, but people sign themselves up like willingly to go to these places. And I've seen like a video of a guy that came out after like doing it, and he just like started crying and like hugging the floor and was like, I can't, like the level of appreciation it gives you for the world and like for actually being out in nature and not in that sort of solitude. Is like really beautiful, apparently.
That's really interesting. It made me think of something that I sort of ponder and think to myself sometimes. Because when you were telling me about those solitary things, and I don't necessarily think I'd sign up for those things, but I don't mind being in solitude at all. Yeah, I'm very happy being alone, even for very long periods of time, and especially as I've grown older, I don't feel the need to be in like groups of people. No. Almost to the point where sometimes I think I'm almost like a bit antisocial. A
lone wolf.
Yeah, and like Emily, my missus always says that I'm like a bit weird because she says I'm the most like friendly antisocial person.
Yeah, so, very outgoing, but you prefer your own space.
Like and like if I like pass somebody on the street, I always will say hello to them. You know, whether it's like walking around the village I live in, or if I pass them, you know, I'm friendly in that regard. You know, I say hello to people. And I'm always so happy to like stop and help somebody. Do you know what I mean? There's been a lot of times when it's like snowed in the past, and because I have like a 4x4, you know, if like I can tell the car's struggling, I will always pull over. I literally keep a tow rope in my car boot for this reason, and I will like tow them home. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't like things like that. Yeah, I like almost like being, I like helping people, but like unless it's like something specific with like a specific friend of mine that I know I have like a rapport with that I feel is like worth spending time with, I have no interest in sort of like going out or like going to like a pub or going to like say like a local gig. Do you know what I mean? Like when I was a teenager, I would go to every single local gig, and if there wasn't a gig on at the weekend, I would be like gutted. And there'd always be somebody I knew that was there, so it almost wouldn't matter to me. I wouldn't even like bother checking who was going. I would just go. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe the day of, I'd be like, oh, you going to like someone's But there would always be somebody. Do you know what I mean? There'd always be somebody, so it just didn't matter. Not just somebody. There'd always be like multiple people I knew. But I guess one of the reasons I knew so many people that went there was because it was also the sort of people that went all the time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But getting on to sort of like my main point though, one of the things that I've sort of like pondered to myself. Do you know what? Do you know what's actually hilarious, Bullwinkle?
What?
I forgot what my point was. That That is so.
We were talking about like the solitude camps that people like sign themselves up for.
Yeah, sorry, I remembered my point now. My point though, when I was talking to I was talking to Mrs. Emily about this recently, is how different I think I am when I'm on my own compared to how I am with other people. And I was like wondering, do you feel the same?
That's a really good point. That's a really good conversation. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, people talk all the time about how there's, you know, hundreds of different versions of yourself out there, whether it's the version that, like you said, is just passing someone, you never see him again, and you're in, you know, walking distance, whether they keep that memory of you or not. They have a certain vision of who you are.
Yeah, or like someone might catch you on a really bad day, and then to that person for the rest of their life, you are an a-hole.
Yeah,
and they for whatever reason, like they won't want to give you a second chance with that because you're not important enough to them to give you a second chance, and and that's fair enough. But whenever they see you, they'll be like, "That's that a-hole."
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
And I think what's interesting as well is like
somebody else, you might be the nicest guy they know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you bring it to the people closest to you as well, like your family, your friends.
Yeah,
because I think naturally your friends and family would have a different view of you than you have of yourself.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I just think that's really interesting. Like, all of your friends will see you in a slightly different light and think you have slightly different characteristics.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Like, how different people bring out different sides of you. And I think one thing that I think's a bit weird about myself is I think that when I'm on my own, I guess it sort of makes sense in a way. But I think when I'm on my own, I feel like I'm like a very serious person. Yeah. And I guess it's sort of like maybe would be weird if you weren't, because if you're just on your own, like being really wacky and everything, it would almost maybe be a bit deranged, like a bit like Joker from the Batman. But I feel like I'm like almost like really serious when I'm on my own. But then say like, again, like different people bring out different things about your personality out of your personality. So like if I'm with someone like Josh, like your brother, I'm always. Or like at least 90% of the time, I'm like really silly when I'm with Josh. Yeah. Like the whole time. Yeah. It's like silly, banterous, like light-hearted, like don't really take anything seriously, like giggly, like almost like silly little giggly schoolboys. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of being surrounding yourself with people that you know can bring that out of you, isn't it? Yeah. And then there's like, but then, do you know what I mean? But I'm certainly not like that with everyone. Do you know what I mean? So it's so interesting, isn't it? But it's like you're just contemplating, like things like that, like whether you want to contemplate like who is the real you, what is the real you. But I don't even think that's the right question or the thing that you should be asking, because I don't think there is a right answer to that. Yeah, I think we're just very complicated, and they're all different facets of your personality. I think we're so complex that even though there's like 7.5 billion people on the planet, whatever, I feel like just like every single individual, you could go into such minute detail about the different elements of everybody's unique personality that you could almost just debate it for like ever. I think to answer your question of what the original question was, or whether I think that you, I think. I feel like I've spent quite a lot of time like by myself, particularly in this last year. Obviously, I've done like quite a lot of traveling, solo traveling, stuff like that. But I think the conclusion I would come to is that every single day I'm a different person. I'm a different version of me. So one morning I might wake up and have a complete, 180 opinion of my way of life or of a certain topic than I would the next day. And I think that's a really interesting thing as well, is how I was going to say fickle, but I don't know if fickle is really the word I'm looking for, but just how malleable I don't think our opinions can be. Yeah, I don't think that fickle maybe is the right word. I mean, obviously that's for you to answer, but I think fickle implies that fickle implies that you're fickle, doesn't it? It implies that that you could have an opinion one day, or you could be talking to somebody and agree with them on an opinion, and then as soon as you're talking to somebody else that has a varying opinion, within 30 seconds you're agreeing with that person. Yeah, I think the difference I mean, because I do kind of mean that, but I don't mean it in the sense of almost like being being put in that direction. But I just think through my own head, my opinions might change vastly from one day to the next. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that like you should evolve, and I think that if you think that maybe your idea of the idea that you had yesterday actually in hindsight was wrong, I think that's a level of honesty which is really good. And I think is required for growth. Definitely. There's loads of things that I thought in my early 20s that I think that I completely have done like a 180 on. Yeah. Like now. Like several things, Yeah. And it's almost like funny, like almost like opinions that I remember I had, and if I look back on it, there was no basis for that opinion. Yeah, I would have just said I had that opinion.
Yeah.
And then obviously as I've gotten older and got a little bit older, a little bit wiser, you know, and like read more about stuff and things like that, and like generally, because I've always been curious about loads of things in life, and like with curiosity, eventually, given enough time, you will just look more and more and more into things. And the more I've done that, the more I've thought, actually, that why did I even have that opinion? That was like completely wrong. Yeah. And I think a lot of the time it's because maybe it's an opinion that's easy to have isn't necessarily the right opinion. So I think that's often the case.
Yeah.
So say you're from, say like when I was 21, there's like I think you're often very influenced by your peer group. And I don't even necessarily mean your immediate friends. I just mean almost like your whole entire age generation, like your generation. So it's like there's almost like a set thought or like
it's almost like societal standards, isn't it?
And it's like this is the agreed thing. So if the agreed thing is that, for example, I don't know, the United States are bad, then you will sort of say that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't, in hindsight, don't really know why you said that. Don't know really why you thought it. And the more and more you look into it, you actually realise it's actually a pretty ridiculous statement. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't for the United States, certainly we as British people would be in a lot more danger than we are, and they are, you know, at least since the beginning of the First World War, they've been like potentially our greatest allies, like on the planet.
Definitely.
Do you know what I mean? And like to almost like disrespect them or poo-poo them by then saying they're like bad is actually like really,
it's a bit outrageous.
It's actually outrageous, and it's actually like not very decent, like at all, is it? In just terms of like actual decency, especially when you bear in mind the hypocrisy of like how many people in this country say their favorite movie. How many people in this country's favorite movie is an American movie, or their favorite artist is an American artist, or do you know what I mean? Like even like food groups that have become popular because of Americans, like our influences on us, so whether it's like cheeseburgers or things like that. Do you know what I mean? Like delicious foods that we eat on a regular basis because of our influence from America. So even things like it's almost like it's A, it's hypocritical, and B, it's just not it's just like not decent. Yeah. And C, it's just not really true. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yet again, as we were saying a bit about our own country earlier on, is America perfect? No. Is any society perfect? No. The same way that no individual is perfect. But in the grand scheme of things, we could go to America now as British people. If we did it all the right way and ended up getting a visa and becoming American citizens, we could have a really good life in America. Yeah. So, like, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? You know, like, do you know what I mean? You know, so it's like, yeah, just like things that I was just using that as an example. I was just using that as an example, but yeah, just things like that. Because I mean, but that was like a fairly good example. I don't think I ever would have actually like said that I thought America were bad, but it was like, you know, I'd hear things like that when I was younger, or hear, you know, about all like the gun-toting Americans and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then like how voice, you know, but then on the other hand, you know, like, you know, everyone should just be like Canada, and then, you know, the older I've gotten, everything is so much more nuanced, and everything is so much more complicated.
Definitely.
Like, I don't think that America is any better than Canada. I don't think Canada is any better than America. I think that
Americans, some of the nicest personal experience, some of the nicest people I've met.
And I tell you what, and for people that have listened to a lot of the episodes of Pandora's Box before, we've obviously had a lot of American guests on. Nicest people ever. You know, you want to talk about, you know, people like Brennan McMillan, might be one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. One of my favourite guests we've ever had on the pod. Like, Brennan McMillan is like, you know, what an ambassador for the United States, and for, like, you know, the state of Kentucky as well, and for Tennessee, where she now resides. You know, people like Pat McNamara, American Special Forces legend. You know, this guy's an absolute freaking legend. But, you know, talk to me one-on-one, down to earth, just chatting about Metallica and all sorts of other stuff. Legend. Same with Brian Alsrew, same with Alan Thrall, all the other Americans we've had on. I think Americans, on the whole, are ridiculously decent people, really friendly, really awesome human beings, you know? Yeah, I mean, we're going off, branching off a little bit, but yeah, no, it's just we're just obviously really trying to emphasise about how, you know, you might sometimes say something, and then, as I said, as you get older, you realise, you know, why did I even have that opinion? Yeah, and you realise how silly that opinion was. But
to sort of follow it up with almost another question on, I guess, human nature, but particularly your human nature. Yeah. I'd say most of the time, and me personally, I definitely would say I'm someone that, for lack of a better term, a grass is greener kind of person. And I like to think I'm quite an optimistic person, you know, positive. Yeah. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of situations where I can get restless, you know, after a certain amount of time. I don't think I could ever do the same thing for, you know, a very extended amount of time, because I think I constantly need a new
stimulus.
A new stimulus, exactly. For all your credit, I think that, I mean, the way that I see you is you're quite like you know what you love, and that's like a real positive, because I think if you were doing those things that you know you love, you would be very content with your life to just happily live and, you know, play music, be out in nature, be with your family.
Work out.
Is that always a way that you've been? Do you always feel that you've been quite
well, like almost
content is almost the word I'm looking for.
I would almost like say like a simple man.
Yes, yeah. In a way, yeah.
Just like Leonard Skinner sang about.
Yeah.
And be a simple. Yeah, I would say so, man. I mean, even my parents said that when I was a little boy, like I wasn't a difficult child. Like I was, like apparently, you know, they'd ask me to do something, I'd do it with a smile on my face. And it's weird, isn't it? And yet again, you know, as I said earlier, you know, you could. Human beings are so complex, so you could go into a million reasons as to why or why not, you know, you're like this. But it's quite interesting, because when I was in school, I was actually very naughty. I was always probably one of the top 5 naughtiest kids in my class. But at home, in my family said I was like very, very good child. Like, you know, I wasn't difficult for my parents. I never gave them a hard time. I never gave them a headache. If they asked me to do something, I would do it. With a smile on my face. I think I've always had that almost like my granddad is real funny as well, because like in his northern accent, him saying this, but he's always said I'm like a dog. He'd be like, "You know what, Calum? You're like a dog," and then he's like, "I don't mean that in a bad way." And then he says like what he means by that is like, you know, if you have like a dog will sort of like, it won't. One of the things that I think people love about dogs is that they will almost like love you unconditionally, and they won't really like question what you want them to do. Yeah,
there's that loyalty.
They'll just do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I feel like I was always like that to my family.
Right.
But I didn't have that say for my teachers.
Right.
I knew that they weren't really my tribe. So then with them, I might it'd be more like, "Calum, do this. Why?"
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I'd then be a bit more like that. You know, but with my family, I was never like that. But yeah, as I said, I think this is all coming back to like almost like being like a simple human being. I always knew what I liked when I was a kid. I never like thought like I don't know what I like, whatever. I always knew what music I liked, knew what I liked in terms of media, in terms of like, you know, movies and programs and stuff like that. I think that's one of the things that made me and your brother Josh obviously like friends, was that we're both similar in that regard.
I think he is exactly what we describe as well. You know, I've spoken in depth to my mum about this as well, because I know my brother Jake. He's not simple in that sense, in the sense that I think, like me, I think we both share that we're quite restless people. I think we're constantly looking for the next thing and what the next step is.
You could almost like, if you didn't see them for like 3 months, they'd be into something completely different than the last time you saw them.
Exactly. And I think I'm a little bit like that. But you and Josh both share that almost appreciation.
We pretty much like the same stuff that we liked
what you're into
when we met. We just like obviously more stuff now, because naturally we've evolved and grown as people. Because obviously there's a big difference between being 5 and being 34. But like, you know, like me and Josh, we know what we like, you know, whether it's with me with like working out and music and like, you know, going out on hikes and doing my gardening and stuff. There's a lot of crossover obviously between me and Josh. With Josh also it's like music and stuff, and obviously he has got into things like running and working out a little bit. Obviously not in the same way necessarily that I am. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm a bit I don't know, I'm into it in maybe like a different way. But like and I have been for a lot longer, but you know, Josh very into his art. Things that I'm very good at his art, you know. But Josh is also really, again, there's some weird parallels with me and Josh. I've always thought like he's also like really fond of gardening now. And so am I. And it's not like when we were younger, we were like, do you know what, mate? One day we should.
One day we're gonna have a garden.
One day we're both just gonna really enjoy like tending to our garden, but we both do. You know. Like I think, you know, we like what we like, and we're quite happy to almost be like left alone and do that thing, and it's not going to change. Do you know what I mean? Like a year down the line, like we're still going to like the things that we like now. So I don't know. Like I guess I've always been pretty content, and I have a very clear idea in my head of almost like what my ideal life scenario would be. And I know that wouldn't change. That's not going to change. My opinion on that isn't going to change.
That's really a blessing, man. I really do, because I think there's so many people out there that don't have that idea, and in a way that can be like so anxiety fueled, because you're constantly almost searching for that purpose. And I think that's why, you know, you see so many people without a purpose. Is because they don't quite know what their ideal life would be. They don't know what they're working towards, perhaps.
I remember when me and Josh were in year 5, I remember we had this teacher called Mr. King. And if Josh is listening to this, he'll probably laugh, because Mr. King was like a bit of a character.
Was he a music teacher?
No.
Oh, maybe not then. I think we did have a music guy.
I mean, when you're in primary school, you know, you just have like I mean, your teacher's a teacher; they do everything, don't they? But he was quite like a sporty guy. He'd pretty much always wear. I mean, sometimes he would wear a suit, but my primary memory of him, he would always be wearing like a football top,
right? Okay,
tucked into tracksuit bottoms,
right?
I almost said joggers, but no, like tracksuit bottoms. It was very 90s, like tracksuit bottoms. Do you know what I mean? I don't think you didn't see people in joggers so much. Do you know what I mean? That
almost like Asics sort of style.
Yeah, like tracksuit. There's a big tracksuit.
Asics Kappa.
It's a different material, isn't it? Joggers is like cotton.
Whereas I know what you're talking about.
A tracksuit bottom is like a different material. Anyway. So he would always be wearing like tracksuit bottoms and like some sort of like football top. I think maybe like Newcastle.
Okay,
I have like white and black in my head.
Cool.
Maybe it was like a Newcastle United. Yeah, maybe that was his team that he liked. I think he was from up north, so maybe he was even from no, he didn't have a Newcastle accent, I think. I'm just trying to remember his like accent like reliably, but I can't. Anyway. I remember him saying to me and Josh one day, and he said it in a derogatory way, like it wasn't like a compliment.
Right.
I guess it'd be weird if it was, but I remember he said to us, like, "You're both obsessed." I remember it was, and I think it was to do in that instance to do with Star Wars. I think it was something like
right.
I think it was something along that.
It sounds very on character.
Yeah, I think me and Josh were like drawing pictures of Star Wars or something along those lines. And I remember he like looked, and it was almost like he was almost like a bit flabbergasted, and he was like, I just remember him looking, and he was almost like shaking his head. And he was like, "You two are obsessed," and it's like I could tell, like, and he was saying it as a bad thing, but now as an adult, and you know, it's one of those weird things. I don't know why that always stuck with me, but it always stuck with me. It didn't bother me though. It's not like it ever kept me up at night, but for some reason, I always remember that he said that, and every now and again over the years, it's come up in my head, and I guess I've always like just not necessarily deliberately, but ended up sort of like wondering what I think of that statement.
Yeah.
And the older I get, I think like he was wrong for saying it in a derogatory way. Yeah. Like I could tell, like in hindsight, one of the reasons that me and Josh became good friends was probably because we both shared an equal passion for things that most other children wouldn't have. So when me and Josh met and we both were really into Jim Carrey movies, we were both really into Jim Carrey movies. So we would quote the Jim Carrey movies to each other and make each other laugh and blah, blah, things like that. Then we really got into Star Wars. We were into Star Wars. We both would know a lot about Star Wars and then talk a lot in depth about Star Wars and about the different characters and blah, 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 in a way that a lot of other kids that say had maybe watched the movies and they said like, "Oh yeah, I like that," but they don't like it enough necessarily to talk about it for a great period of time or to look into it in the same way that me and Josh would. Same when it came to things like Pokemon. When the Pokemon era came out, me and Josh went like balls deep on Pokemon.
We
went balls deep on Pikachu, mate. Do you know what I mean? And we had like both had the little poker deck. It wasn't like a poker index, I think. It was like a book, basically, with all the original 151 Pokemon in. And, we like just knew everything about Pokemon. And Josh, I think to this day, remembers like off by heart some of like the poker raps, I think.
Oh, right.
Like some of the original Pokemon songs. I'm pretty sure he does, yeah. And do you know what I mean? But we both know to this day like a ridiculous amount of about Pokemon. Like it's still just in the archives. I could still recount so much information to you about Pokemon and about Star Wars and then about everything else that we got into over the years. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying, there's obviously certain things that I got into super that Josh didn't and certain things that he got into that I didn't. But I think it was that we almost recognized on a subconscious level the fact that, this is somebody else that I can talk to in depth about the things that I'm into, because not many other kids, especially of that age, of like a really young age, would be like that into stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know what I mean? Or it would be like a fleeting interest and then they'd move on. Or it wouldn't be as in depth. Whereas me and Josh would get really into stuff. Yeah. And like really, and then I think that's one of the reasons to this day me and Josh can have really good conversations about stuff, because when it comes to say music, which is one of both mine and Josh's like biggest loves and earliest loves, we can talk for ages about music, like ages and ages and ages, like just about different, bands and artists and the history of that band and like their albums and, and whether it's like even just like their album cover artwork or like some bit of trivia about a song or, and it's like, but that's interesting, when you obviously, I guess at the end of the day, that's almost like what makes a friend a friend. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think you're naturally drawn to the people that have those similar interests to you, aren't you? But it's funny that those interests have also then gone on to match as you've grown older as well.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Or like, there's often like, times that I'll really get into a band and I won't realise that I know anybody that's into that band, and then I'll realise suddenly that Josh likes that band and he's liked them for like a year or two as well. But they're like quite a relatively new up and coming band, say. Oh, no way, that's a bit weird. Do you know what I mean? Or like just like loads of stuff. It's hard to think about it all off the top of my head. I think this is a very like
broken down way to describe it, because like we said, humans are so complex. But I'd say in that sense, you and Josh are both specialists of what you're interested in. You like you say, you obsess over it. You gain so much information that if there was anything about gym, you could tell people about it, you know? Whereas I think the sort of person I am, I don't think I've got that same obsession.
Like you just haven't, you almost haven't just got that in you.
I think I'd almost describe myself as more of like a jack of all trades when it comes to my interest, in the sense that whatever it is, I'm most likely going to, you know, find it really interesting for a month, a week, and I'm going to find as much information as I can during that week. I'll love it, and I could speak to people about it on a very surface level, but I maybe wouldn't have that same devotion that, like you were saying, you or Josh share.
Yeah, I would say probably the easiest way, I know it's like almost like to try and explain how I personally think my mind works when it comes to like that sort of thing, is I think that I am a naturally very curious person. So as a result, I'm curious about pretty much everything, but obviously naturally far more curious about some things than others. So there's like, so there's obviously the difference of what I know about certain subject matters compared to others will obviously vary wildly. So there are some topics I know next to absolutely nothing about. There's some topics I know a ridiculous amount about, and then there's a hell of a spectrum in the middle. Do you know what I mean? There's lots of things that I... but I'm curious about pretty much everything in the world, like more or less. Do you know what I mean? There's like it's very hard for me to be like not to find a subject completely boring. Yeah, you know,
I like to think I'm similar in that.
Yeah, I definitely think you are. I think that's why you've got like good trivia, like good general knowledge. Do you know what I mean? Like there's been lots of times on Pandora's Box in the past, you know, and I'm like, do you guys know? Like, would you like hazard a guess at this? Whether it was like you know, like when we talked about apex predators like several weeks ago, and you like guessed a lot of them correctly, but it's because you've got that inbuilt curiosity as well. You know what I mean? But I would just say, yeah, obviously you've got the extreme spectrum on my end, so you've got like music, like anything to do with like, you know, training, things like that. Some like fantasy things and things that I've got in, you know, whether it's like things like Lord of the Rings, other fantasy things I'm into that I'm like super interested in. History I'm super interested in. Obviously certain areas of history more than others. Saying history is such a broad scope, like, well, what history, you know? Yeah, again, there's some elements of history or some periods of history I know next to nothing about. There's other periods of history I know I could bore you with for hours and hours on end. Do you know what I mean? Yes, things like that I have put a ridiculous amount of time into in my life, in just terms of like accumulating, you know, just knowledge or whatever. And then there's obviously other things, you know, not so much, everything in the middle, you know. But I
think in a weird way that's why I struggle with stuff like learning a new instrument or something like that, because
you have to
dedicate yourself.
The grind almost,
I think I can love something for a month. And then, like, there's certain things that will surpass that. Like, I've been playing golf for a little while now, and I still find that really interesting. But I struggle to be fascinated with something for a long period of time. Yeah,
it's interesting. I see that a lot with people when it comes to, like, instruments, like music in a way of actually, like, learning an instrument. And don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not an instrumentalist, if you know what I mean by that. Like, I've got, like, a lot of friends that are, like, just really good at their specific instrument. I wouldn't even really know. Like, I mean, I guess, like, I can play guitar. And I sing, and obviously because with something like playing the guitar, you can then lend that to lots of other string instruments. Do you know what I mean? So I could obviously play bass guitar, mandolin. Even though mandolin and ukulele are different tunings, I can play them. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like I can learn things on that. So I guess I can play like stringed instruments to a certain level and like sing. But yeah, I'm not like an instrumentalist by any means. But I guess, that's sort of, I guess, by the by. Yeah, when it comes to like learning an instrument, I can see how like some people just almost like don't have the mentality to do it. But I think, you know, you almost have to like embrace the grind, but I don't think you have to think about it like embracing the grind. I think at the end of the day, you either want to do it enough or you don't. So I don't think that any of my friends, be interesting if any of them are listening to, like, you know, let us know. I don't think that any of my friends that I say know how to play instruments would have said that they like thought in their head, I need to embrace the grind. Do you know what I mean? Like, I need to sit down, and I almost like in this like studious, like Chinese, like academic student that's being like forced to like study for 12 hours a day so that they become like this ingenious virtuoso. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's like that. I think that they all just wanted to do it. And because they wanted to do it, they naturally put the hours in. Naturally got good at it. And I also think that there's almost like, you can trick yourself to do that as well. So I think even if you don't naturally do that, so I think that I think that people like Josh and Drew and that just learn instruments because they liked it, and then so they were willing to spend their time doing it. But I think that even if you don't naturally do that, I think that there are ways that you can almost trick yourself into doing that. What I mean by that is, for anybody out there that's like thinking, I want to learn the guitar, but how the hell do I get from literally not knowing how to play the guitar to being quote unquote good at the guitar, good on the guitar? Yeah, again, I mean, that's relative. Like, good compared to who? Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that's hard to say. I mean, to this day, I'm like, am I good on the guitar? Do you know what I mean? I mean, like, compared to who? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Compared to somebody that doesn't play guitar,
Yeah.
Compared to Eddie Van Halen, no. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, like, I think find a way that's fun. So, like, if you're like thinking, like, I want to learn guitar, but I don't really know how, like, you don't have to like sit down and buy all these like books and find it really boring, like, you know, this boring way. I would say, like, right, what songs do you like? Right, think of like songs that you like to listen to, right, and then look up how to play them. At first, it might be easier to look up tabs. You'll soon find out what that means. If you don't have no idea what I'm on about, you'll soon find out what a tab is if you learn how to play guitar. But I would say alongside that, I would say look up guitar chords, right? Learning songs with chords will naturally teach you how to play chords.
Right.
If say like a song, if you look up a song, and it say you look up the chords to a song that you like, and it says, I don't know, the chords for that song. There's like 3 chords in the verse, and it's like C, D minor, E minor, right? If you don't know what they are, then just look them up.
Man,
we have Google nowadays. Literally type in C chord guitar, and it will show you. Okay, now you know what that looks like. Do that with your hands. It's going to feel weird at first if you've never played the guitar. But that's the beautiful thing about the human body. You know, if you do it all the time, it will suddenly just feel right. And then you can look up what a D minor is. Oh, okay, that's a D minor. Have a little fiddle around, feel what's right. And usually when they say like it shows like a chord, it will say like, if you know what I mean, say it's like a chord where your fingers need to be on 3 strings. It will say like 1, 2, 3. And what that will mean is like the 1 is your index finger, the 2 is your next finger, and the 3 is your ring finger. Right. Do you know what I mean? So it will even give you like the order of what hands, you know what I mean? And then once you know that, okay, so I know now what a C and a D minor and an E minor is, and I know that that's the verse. At first, it might feel weird. Just keep playing around with it. Play along. Before you know it, you'll have like some like cronky knockoff version of that song you like. The more you play it, the more it will actually just start sounding like that song.
It's funny the amount of times that I've played Born in the USA because there's like this online course you can do, and that was always the first lesson was learning Born in the USA.
Yeah, I could never learn like that. I could never learn like an online lesson thing where they're like, learn Born in the USA, because I haven't got the inspiration to learn Born in the USA. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nothing 100%. Against Bruce. Nothing against Bruce Springsteen, like, you know, good musician, whatever. But to me, like, to this day, like, the only way and the only reason why I ever practice the guitar, if you want to call it practicing guitar, is sometimes I'm listening to a song and I just think, and maybe I'll be singing along to it in my car, because I've always loved singing, and I always like singing. Like, anybody that like knows me and has been around me, whether it's doing their head in or not, I will sing. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those things that's like, to people that are super close to me, at times it's probably annoying, other times maybe not, I don't know, like, but you know, like, if I'm listening to a song in the car, I will want to fucking sing along to it. Yeah. But it's good because, a bit like what we were saying about the natural practice, I think I've like practiced singing a lot of my life now. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you know, a lot of people will say, like, you know, we'll go to like vocal coaches or have vocal warm-ups. Well, I guess if you're trying to sing along to, you know, whether it's a Metallica song 1 minute and then a Jeff Buckley song the next minute and then some folk song the next minute, you know, I'm actually like practiced like lots of different ranges
it's a really good way
and
of
like
thinking
styles. Of it. Do you know what I mean? And if you enjoy singing, I'd say freaking go for it, man. You know, like, practice singing all the time, like whenever you're alone, when you get a minute, because that's you know, your vocals are an instrument the same as any others. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, just like practice singing, and then hopefully that will just help you get good at it.
Definitely,
or better at least.
I think this whole topic of sort of obsession ties in really well to something that we were going to talk about today as well. We were saying yesterday we were going to talk about the Olympics. Yeah. Because it amazes me just how obsessed these people are with their individual sport. I always think, personally, I love certain sports more than others. Like, I love golf and I love cricket and football. Naturally, but I also would say I naturally love all sports. Like, no matter what it is, if it's a competitive thing of me being active, I'm all for it. No matter what sport, you could throw me in any single sport and I would try my best and I'd love it instantly, you know? So I find it amazing that there are people out there that have dedicated themselves so much to one particular sport and one avenue that they've become Olympic champions, the best in the world at what they do. I always find that pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because my attitude towards sports is definitely different towards yours. I would definitely not say that I'm into like every sport or that I would like be up for playing any sport. I just wouldn't. Like, there's certain sports I definitely have no interest in, but then there's other sports I have a lot of interest in. The sports I'm into tend to be like, at least in this country, not the more mainstream ones. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I guess the only mainstream one that I'm like at all interested in is rugby, but even so, I don't follow it like religiously. Yeah. You know, I'm like really into like a lot of like strength sports and things like that, but also like wrestling and things like that. I love wrestling.
More like physical sport.
Yeah, and like all like the sort of like the different martial arts stuff and stuff like that. You know, and like MMA things like that. I've always really liked that. But I mean, in the Olympics, Olympics is different because that's athletics. You know, I know that they do have more traditional sports in the Olympics nowadays. Like a lot of them, don't they? They literally have like football and stuff like that in the Olympics. But the type of things in the Olympics I'm much more drawn to is the athletics. So like the decathlon, the wrestling, the Olympic weightlifting. Like that's what I look for. The judo. Do you know what I mean? Things like that. That's what I really look forward to. You know, watching like that. I really look forward to that.
Did you watch much of it this year?
I watched a fair amount of it. It just so happened that while the Olympics was on, I was away in the Isle of Man with my family, so I didn't actually watch anywhere as much as I normally would. I did still follow things that I find interesting, like the wrestling and like the judo, things like that. Did you hear about that guy? I'm pretty sure he's the only Olympian ever to win gold at 5 different Olympic games. Did you hear about that Olympic wrestler who won it?
No, but that sounds very.
I'm pretty sure he's made history for being the only man to win an Olympic gold medal at 5 different Olympic games.
20 years.
Sorry, let me try and look up
20 years of domination in your sport is crazy.
He was a Cuban Olympic wrestler, and he's gone down in the world of wrestling as an absolute legend. Because wrestling is one of those things. Like, it certainly isn't the most like popular sport in the world, but people that love wrestling love wrestling. Yeah. You know what I mean? So the guy's name that's why I can't remember it. It's a really awkward name. If you're like a British guy, like I've never seen this name before. It sounds like freaking Majin Buu or something. His name's like Maijane Lopez.
Okay.
Like Maijane Lopez, like Mijain. Like right. Maijane, I guess, like Maijane Lopez won 5th straight gold medal. So yeah, he's a legendary Cuban wrestler. He won gold originally at Beijing in 2008. Then 4 years later, he won the gold medal in London 2012. Then 4 years later, again in Rio 2016. Then in Tokyo 2020. And then has just won again at Paris 2024. Won the Olympic gold medal every
16 years.
Can you believe that?
That's insane.
Yeah, as I said, I'm pretty sure he's the only guy that's ever won gold in 5 different, because that's quite a long era.
That longevity is like ridiculous, like especially of a physical demanding sport such as wrestling,
especially in a sport like wrestling. Because even if you are not interested in wrestling, you've never looked into it in your life, like I can tell you, it is a brutal sport. It's a very injury prone sport. You know, you're pitted. It's done by weight categories, so you're always with somebody your own size. Wrestlers tend to be insanely strong, like some of the strongest athletes on the planet. And they're masters of movement. The wrestlers are almost like a big cat. And what I mean by that is you get like a good heavyweight wrestler like this guy we're talking about. They're almost like the tigers of the human world. You know, because they're massive and they're heavy, but you have to be so nimble and agile. Because if you're slow and sluggish and lumbering, then you're going to get taken down really quick. Because you have to be super quick. Like wrestlers are very, very quick, and they're always looking for like different angles to take you down. Because obviously that's how you score a point. You get score a point on a takedown and things like that. So, you know, if you can get taken down easily, then you're going to lose. So you have to have like super good balance. You have to like, if someone picks up your leg, you have to be able to hop on it and then reverse it and stuff like that with like brutal strength. And the training for wrestling is brutal.
I was going to say,
lots of like neck bridges and stuff like that, and it's like savage.
Yeah, the amount of intense workout you would have to go through over those 16 years, you would think that would take more of a toll on your body to the point where 16 years after winning a gold, you wouldn't be the same physical specimen that you still are. I mean, I suppose he probably isn't the same physical specimen.
But
probably
the fact he's still the best in the world.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Oh, it is. It is absolutely ridiculous, man. Yeah, it's absolutely freaking crazy, really. Yeah, I mean, what a legend of a guy. I mean, he must be like a rare specimen, I guess. Yeah. Because with most people, they say, don't they? There's like you've got like maybe a 5 to 10 year window of what will be your peak,
your prime,
and then after that it's probably downhill. So it's very rare for someone to have like almost 2 decades.
Yeah,
you know,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know actually how old he is. So I might like try and look up quickly like actually how old he is. But,
while you're searching that, I've got a question. This was something I was pondering myself, right? And I think I've got quite a good answer.
Right.
If you could add an Olympic sport to LA 2028, what would you add? I'll give you a second to think on it. But I thought, imagine this, right? So you've
42
got like
years old, by the way. 42 years, that guy.
Wow.
So I guess he would have been in his like mid-20s when he first started, and now he's in his early 40s. Yeah.
That's insane. 42 years old and winning gold for wrestling.
And a big freaking dude as well. 132 kilos.
Oh my God. Jesus. That's a unit.
That guy's a lot bigger than me, man.
Yeah.
Hell of a lot bigger than me. Yeah, what an absolute unit of a guy. Like, yeah, imagine getting freaking...
Did it say how tall he is?
Let's have a look. Let's have a look. He is... Oh, yeah, he's freaking tall as well. 196... Sorry, 100...
6'5".
Yeah, six. So he's 6'5" and 132 kilos. What's that in pounds or stone? 132 kg in pounds. Let's have a look. For all of you old school people out there, or Americans, 291 pounds.
Oh my God,
that's so big.
Jesus Christ,
that's so big.
That's insane.
In stone,
literally the same frame as Randy Orton that we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, 20.6 stone. 20.6.
Jesus.
But the thing is as well, you look at him, he's not an ounce of fat on him.
Yeah.
He's jacked. He's just this big freaking
just a genetic freak, man.
Just a big jacked black dude.
Yeah.
Massive jacked freaking black Cuban dude.
That's so cool.
20 stone,
so cool.
6'5". Yeah, man, what a ledge.
Freak of nature.
I think that's the thing, like with things like that, like when it comes to athletics, I think that's one of the things that like it impresses me. I think, well, it's a funny thing to say, and it seems like an obvious thing to say. Like, it's like, I find very impressive individuals impressive. And I know that might sound like a really impressive, obvious thing to say, but I don't think everyone does. I think some people just don't care. Yeah, I genuinely think there are more people that are interested in like what's going to happen on EastEnders tonight than like some of the most amazing people in the world.
Which is crazy.
When I hear about that guy and hear about he's like the only guy ever to win like gold medals in 5 consecutive Olympic Games, or I don't know, some amazing musician. And no, it doesn't even have to be the general consensus that they're amazing. One of my favourite musicians of all time, in Calum Ring, I think that he's one of the best musicians I've ever heard in my life. And there's a lot that goes into, I think, being a musician. There's many different facets. I don't think that necessarily means like your technical ability. It's the combination of his songwriting ability, his originality, mixed with things like his technique, and several other things that I'm probably can't think of off the top of my head right now. All goes into a package that would make me think that he is one of the best musicians I've ever heard in my life. I've never heard anyone else say that they think he's one of the best musicians in this that they've ever heard. And he's not even relatively a particularly popular musician. Yeah, like, relatively.
Yeah.
Like I sometimes watch his like YouTube. Sorry, it's for him like on like Facebook Live, doing like a little performance just at home in his little compound in the middle of the woods, and there'll be like 30 other people watching it around the world. That's crazy. Do you know what I mean? But like, crazy. So it's like I always find, whether it's people like that guy, or people like in Calum Ring, I just certain people, if for whatever reason they stand out to me, then I will find that really impressive, and I will become interested by that person. Definitely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So my sport I'm going to bring to the world, right?
My
sport I'm going to bring to the world. So if I had one Olympic sport I could bring, right? So we know what a triathlon is, of course, right? Long distance, cycling, running, swimming. Yeah. Imagine a triathlon, but it's like short distance. Right. So it's just like these absolute freaks of nature that can like you've got an 100-meter dash into an 100-meter swim into like 500-meter cycle. Right, and it's just the race. Maybe you even take the cycle out and add something else, because I think that adds an element of getting on the bike, and that could change it. I just want like running, swimming, just like some freak that is just the quickest thing at moving.
Yeah, because it's interesting, isn't it? Like when it comes, and it's a good point actually, because like on the surface, running is running, but actually there's very different types of running. You take like a Usain Bolt and a Mo Farah, they couldn't be more different. No. One of them is completely geared, both genetically and in terms of their sports-specific training. Say Mo is conditioned genetically and in terms of his training to be not. It doesn't even matter that he's particularly fast. He just needs to be pretty fast for a ridiculously long amount of time. And it's the length of time which is the main key to him, right? Usain Bolt, it could not be further from that. It doesn't. There's no element of like, oh, I need to run for like even more than like a minute. Like, in most cases, he just needs to be able to go super, like as fast as he freaking can for ideally the shortest amount of time possible. And what I mean by that, obviously, is like
9.56.
What I mean by that is obviously, it's like, look, the quicker he can run 200 meters, the better.
He
doesn't need to run. There's no need to like try and run more than that. No, you should be trying to bring your time down. Like, so it's all about power. It's power,
that explosivity.
White blood cells, snap. Like that 0 to 60. That 0 to 60. In that regard, sprinters actually have far more in common with people like powerlifters. Than they do with long distance runners. Even though you're on paper like, well, yeah, but it's still running. But like, no, because as I said, it's completely different. Sprinters need to be powerful the same way that powerlifters need to be powerful. If you can't shift mass, what does a sprinter do, right? They become efficient at shifting mass as quickly and as efficiently as possible. That's all that people in weightlifting and powerlifting do as well. They have a weight on a bar and they need to get it from A to B as quick as possible. It doesn't matter whether it's a squat or a bench press or in Olympic weightlifting, it's a clean and jerk or a snatch. But it's about getting it from A to B, in the sprinter's case, literally the starting line to the finishing line, as efficiently and as quickly as possible. That's all it is. So it's very different than what people at long distance runners
Absolutely. Do. And imagine how entertaining that would be as well. Just seeing
Usain Bolt just sprint 200 meters
and then just go straight into a dive.
And then just like swimming like there's literally a shark chasing him, and then getting out and then just like going full on mental on a bike. Because what's it called? The cycling in the Olympics where they just fricking hoon it around the fricking. What's it even called? There's like it's like an indoor room, isn't it? And it's like
does it become
like it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't think of it.
Yeah, me too.
But it's like
I was going to say cyclone, but I don't think
it's something like that, though, isn't it? I was going to say it begins with a C. I was going to say it begins with a C, but like, and obviously our most famous Olympian.
Is it Kieran? Men's Kieran?
It might be, but it's like it was Sir Chris Hoy.
Yes,
he was like the best at it.
Yeah.
And he won us loads of gold medals. And he had like jacked quads. Because all of his training, he just basically, it's like sprinting but on a bike, isn't it? And you just hoon it. I remember if you saw pictures of Sir Chris Hoy's legs when he was like in his Olympic prime, they were humongous. Like apparently, I remember watching him on a program, and he was saying that he had to have all of his trousers specially made.
I believe it
because he physically couldn't fit into any normal trousers.
It's insane.
I'm not surprised in a way, because like, I mean, I've got big thighs relative to like a lot of people, and man, a lot of trousers on me are tight, but I mean, my legs have got to be half the size of it. Like literally. That's crazy. So I'm not surprised, really, that you have to have his trousers freshly made.
So I think it would be either that would be my one sport,
a sprinting triathlon,
or another would be those guys that like almost run like an ape would, like run on four, like both legs and arms. I'd like to see that in like a 100-meter sprint, but you've got to use like all your limbs. I think that would be so entertaining.
That'd be freaking nuts.
The ape run, that would be amazing.
That'd be demented, man.
You would see these guys, like all of the athletes would look so different to everyone else as well, because not only would their legs be like jacked, but their arms would look like their legs as well. So that would be a really cool little thing to see.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Do you know what? When it comes to mine, I really just don't know. I really don't know.
It's a good question to throw to the audience as well. Comment down below what Olympic sports would you create?
Yeah, and obviously you could just make it up. I don't know. I feel like if I had more time, I would want to come up with something, but I just don't know right now what that something is. Something really freaking physical. Something really physical.
Yeah, that just pushes the limits completely.
Something like brutal. I don't know. I can't think of exactly what it is, but like maybe almost like some sort of, I don't know, like maybe like some a bit like maybe almost more like a decathlon, but I could pick the events and they weren't your
almost like World's Strongest Man type thing.
Yeah, like almost like one would be like wrestling.
Yeah,
right?
And
then the next thing it would be like, that's a cool thing. Like just all the different combat sports, and you just like go through all of them, like basically fighting each other. Yeah,
it's like points based.
I wouldn't want to necessarily do all the combat sports, but yeah, that would be an interesting one. But yeah, maybe almost like where the first round is like wrestling, and it's like the first to 3 points or something like that. For like takedowns, like say a point of takedown, something like first to 3 points, and then I don't know, maybe like some sort of like weightlifting thing. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It'd just be really interesting. Or I could come up with some sort of like almost like like new sport that I could make. Yeah, that'd just be super grueling and super physical.
Yeah.
You know? Like I don't know, like carrying like a certain amount of weight over your shoulder. Like a certain amount of times back and forth or something like that, and then obviously the best time wins, and then you'd move on to another event, and it would be like I guess you'd have to do different weight categories, but then again that's the same for Olympics. Then it'd be like, I don't know, like just like maybe you could even have something like a certain amount of pull-ups, but then into a dead hang, and then you'd be judged on how many pull-ups you did, but then how long you held the dead hang and things like that. You know, just like something really brutal and grinding.
Yeah.
That was really just tested the complete both mental and physical fortitude of a human being. Yeah.
I just want to see the toughest people you possibly can. Basically,
how do you even get into being one of the people that decides what's in the Olympics? I want to become. I want to become one of those people now.
We should be the committee for the Olympics.
Yeah,
this is our.
We'd do a better
pledge.
job, man.
We would.
We'd do a better job.
We would. There'd be no breakdancing.
Yeah,
or maybe they would, because it was quite interesting. It was quite entertaining.
We've only got about 10 minutes of the show left.
Cool.
We were going to talk about loads of different stuff on the show today, but I think we've had a real natural, like, authentic conversation, which is awesome. So we'll save those other topics for another day. But we'll finish off a couple of things about the Olympics, and then also I want to ask you about Blade. And we'll finish on Blade, because Bullwinkle, for the first time ever, watched the original Wesley Snipes Blade movies literally last night. So I want to ask him what his thoughts on that were, because obviously, for all of you that have watched the new Deadpool and Wolverine movie, Wesley Snipes' Blade was in that. For me, it was one of the highlights of the movie. I've always loved the movie's Blade. My Uncle Dom, who's been a guest on this show twice over the years, showed me Blade when I was still in single digits, when I was probably about 8 years old. I freaking loved it. I freaking loved the movie. I might not have been 8. It was whenever Blade first came out, basically, my Uncle Dom showed me. I freaking loved the movie. Been such a big fan of the movie since. All 3 Blade movies are good, especially the first 2. But the third movie makes up for it just because Triple H and Ryan Reynolds are on it. And I think Jessica Biel as well, But getting back to a bit like the Olympics thing a minute. That whole ray gun thing, man, mental. And do you know what? I was so almost like confused the first time I saw it. And when I say confused, I mean confused because I genuinely didn't know. I was like, is this like a prank? I thought, is she like pranked like the globe? And she pranked like the entire world? Like, is she basically having a laugh? But then what like dumbfounded me was it's become really apparent to me since that she she was being completely serious. And I watched this interview with her a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw it. And it was her talking about it, and it almost it sounds mean, man. It almost was comical because she was really serious in it and saying that like how hurtful all the hate she's been getting is. But then like while it was like she was saying it seriously, it was then cutting back to her like throwing in all of her like funny little poses and like crazy things that she was doing and that
doing the sprinkler,
mate. And I was like, man, like this is crazy. I thought that like it would have still been crazy if it was like a prank on her part, but the fact that it wasn't, and she genuinely thought that she in her mind was as good as the other breakdancers who were actually legit, like, you know, like what you think of when you think of a breakdancer, like the crazy twirly stuff, for lack of a better word, you know, like actually legit. You want to see
like a Beyblade.
The human Beyblade. And I think regardless of what athletic endeavour or sport, when you're watching anybody at the highest level, they should be doing stuff that you, that you cannot do any of it.
Yes,
there is nothing that you can do that they can do. Whereas we could do everything that Ray Gun did.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
100%.
I don't think it's outrageous to say that.
No.
I would say give us a day's training, and we could do everything that Ray Gun did in her performance.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Both of us, even though we've different body types and everything, I'm confident that both of us could do everything she did. Whereas there is nothing I don't think there's any other Olympian in the whole entire of the Olympics that we could come close to doing what they did with a day's training.
Yeah.
Which I think puts it all into perspective.
I would love to know, like, who... Why? How does this even occur? What we were saying, we were speaking about this like a week ago, and both of us were like, we don't know if it was like a joke or a prank, but I'd love to know who told her this was a good idea, or who initially like made this into existence.
I don't know if people have just made this up. I'm not going to pretend that I've like looked ridiculously into this subject, right? But I did hear. Right, and if this is the case, this is pretty bad. It's like a husband or something was on like the committee.
We were saying about this, weren't we?
On like the Australian, basically, for lack of a better term, in layman's terms, on the Australian like panel or commission, whatever you want to call it, that decided on who to put through to the Olympics. Her husband was one of them. Yeah. Something like
allegedly.
Allegedly. I say, we're not saying that for definite. We don't know that.
If that is the case, that's mental.
That's what I've heard, and you're saying that you've heard it as well. If that is the case, and it does seem like some level of corruption's got through. The thing is though, if there isn't some sort of underhanded play going on, it makes me just not understand how she got through, because you think there has to be some sort of
someone that can spin a bit more.
Yeah, you think
at the very least
with any of these athletics, with any of these sports, you think there's like a certain criteria. Like you go before, like say, like, you know, whether it's like a tournament based, you know, you go up, you're eliminated, you're through to the next round, you know, or you're either eliminated, you're through to the next round, and then it works like that, or it's done on points. So however it's done, you would think that somebody, without being rude, like Reagan, would not have then ended up getting to the point where Australia thought, whoever deals with the thought, that's our girl. That's who we're sending to represent the women in the breakdancing. Are you trying to tell me in a country the size of Australia... Don't get me wrong, I know most of Australian settlements are just on the outskirts, right? But even so, right, there are some massive Australian cities and settlements. Australia is one of the biggest countries on the planet. Are you telling me in the entirety of Australia, there aren't at least a handful of chicks that are freaking amazing at breakdancing?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, probably like off the wall good.
And if there's not, don't send anyone. That's what I'd say.
But there's got to be, right?
You think?
There's got to be.
You think? Just naturally, you would think there would be natural freaks out there that could learn this within a week and maybe be better.
I mean, the interesting thing about humans are, regardless of how niche something is, there's usually at least a group of people that are ridiculously into it. Yeah. Whether it's playing Warhammer or like folk music in the UK, right? Folk music is relatively a small scene, but, you know, there's still some freaking amazing folk players. And on all their traditional instruments, they are insane and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, regardless of how niche something is... Yeah. There's usually a group of people that are freaking amazing at it.
Do you know what I will say?
What?
I really would love to see a redemption arc now.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see some sort of... I want to see her come back.
She's like the Vegeta
I know they've said...
breakdancing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Starts off a villain. Yeah. Becomes one of the main characters.
I want to see her come back Super Saiyan. That's what I want to see. I know they've taken Olympics out of the next... breakdancing out of the next Olympics. Yeah. But I'd just love to see some sort of competition.
That it's pretty much like...
Probably her fault.
That's like so savage, isn't it?
But I'd love to see the return, you know. I'd love to see her come back, win gold in something, you know, and I want to see some stuff, her do something that I think that is genuinely impressive, and I really hope she can, because that would be a very cool thing to see.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah, me too, man. Yeah, it'd be a beautiful thing to see a redemption arc. I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that she. I don't think she'd be allowed to compete on Olympic stage again. Well, they said they've taken it out anyway, but I don't know if it's in the World Championships or anything like that. I don't reckon it probably is.
Not sure.
I don't reckon it is. I feel like the World Championships compared to the Olympic Games is a bit more like no nonsense.
Yeah,
that's the impression I get.
Yeah,
but
there's got to be some sort of competition out there. Like, I'm sure there'll be some sort of breakdancing competition, and I hope she wins.
Me too.
I genuinely do.
Yeah. No, me too. I genuinely mean that too, because I mean. Say what you like about her, right? At the end of the day, it was freaking entertaining.
Yes,
one thing that you could say in her defense, right, is her performance was genuinely in the top 5 most entertaining things that's happened in this year's Olympics. And at the end of the day, what do you want to be as a human if not entertained?
Absolutely.
It's like what I always say about movies, right? A lot of people say like, oh, this movie's bad, or, you know, like a lot of 80s movies or 70s movies, especially like horror movies and things, or action movies, they'll say, oh, they're so bad, the acting isn't great, the CGI is awful. I'm like, yeah, but it's freaking entertaining.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. I know it's not ever going to win an Oscar, but it entertains me.
Yeah, and in that way you get more enjoyment out of it than you would a film that might win an Oscar.
I would rather watch something ridiculously entertaining than something that is technically good but bores me.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So in that regard, Reagan, you've done yourself proud. You've entertained millions and millions of people. Mm-hmm. You put a smile on loads of people's faces. You were one of the most entertaining things about this year's Olympics. There are, as we speak, millions upon millions of memes circulating the internet. Hilarious memes. All with her like that.
Doing the kangaroo.
So it's like, at the end of the day, man, it's like why comedians are so good.
Yes.
Why I have so much respect and love for comedians, because at the end of the day, they put a smile on people's faces.
You're bringing joy into the world.
Entertaining people, putting a smile on someone's face.
And for that, Reagan, you are a friend of the pod.
You are a friend of the pod. Right, man, so Blade. Let's finish on Blade.
Man, it's so good, isn't it? It's so good. I think the only scene I'd seen before was like a clip out of the nightclub bloodbath.
Right at the beginning of the movie.
Right at the beginning. Yeah. And apart from that, I was going in blind. Right. But man, I think that's maybe... I can't think of what other films Wesley Snipes would have been in. I think that's maybe the first Wesley Snipes film I've ever seen.
Do you know what? I'm sure he has been in other movies, but I don't even know.
Yeah.
To me, he's just Blade.
Yeah. He was so good, man. And like you said, the combat in it, insane. The story really good. I love the cheesy, like, 90s. It is 90s, isn't it?
Yep, late 90s.
The cheesy 90s, like, almost quips to the camera. And almost, like, every now and again, after, like, he'd do something cool, it'd, like, cut to him and he'd, like, pull a little face.
Yeah.
But it's so, like, I don't know, it warms the heart, It's really good.
And he's just badass as well, isn't he?
He's so badass.
He's so badass, man.
Yeah.
And, like, the way he kills vampires is brutal as well.
Yes, man. Some of the scenes, so good. So brutal. Like, the way, spoiler alert for anyone that's not watched it, the way he kills the guy at the end, the, like, blood god, Frost. Yeah. Man, what a badass way to kill someone. The way he, like, all turns into, like, some weird monster.
He's got those, like, little, like, needles with, like, the little things that make them explode. Yeah, and he just chucks loads into him. Yeah. So good. And when he's burning that fat vampire called Biscuit Boy with the like the UV torch. Yeah. He's like probably like burning, and he's like making him give him the information.
That was really brutal. There was it was a brutal film.
Oh, it is brutal.
Was it a 15?
Oh, I think it's either a 15 or an 18.
Yeah, that's
I wouldn't
insane.
be surprised if it's an 18.
Yeah, to be fair, it's
quite brutal.
The amount of gore.
I know there's no nudity, but there's a lot of there's a lot of blood and gratuitous violence. That vampire with the long hair, and he just keeps cutting off his hand every time he sees it.
Yeah.
He like hates Blade, and he's almost like in his head he's like Blade's rival, but Blade always just toying with him, and every time he just chops off his hand and then just leaves.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, not a good. So good.
There were some like quotes in it as well, and I'm really annoyed now that I didn't like write them down or prepare them.
He's a great quoter.
Because some of the quotes he was like pulling out, he'd say it and I'd go, man, that's badass. That's so cool.
He just looks cool as well, doesn't he?
Yes.
Like with his long black like leather trench coat and just like his black like almost like utility vest underneath and his leather trousers and he just looks cool, man. He just looks badass, and he's like driving that awesome car. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's like some awesome like old Dodge or old Chevy, something like that. With the cool wheels and everything, and he's got that badass character Whistler, who's played by a guy called Chris Christopherson, who in real life is obviously an actor, but he's also a really good American country and folk singer.
Yes, collaborated with Johnny Cash, I believe.
He has, my friend. Yeah, and Waylon Jennings, all of those classics. Yeah.
Pretty sick.
Yeah, just great movie, man.
So good. I think one quote I can remember one quote. And it was when Frost was almost like teasing him about the fact that he was going to become like the blood god and everything, and he was just like, "You'll be dead by dawn," and that was like his last words to him. That was really cool.
He's just like so unashamedly badass.
Yes,
and because as I said to you when we were talking about Blade before you watched it, like, you know, Wesley Snipes is like a legit martial artist, so all of his scenes like just look good.
Yeah, the combat's insane
because he was such a good martial artist. Well, obviously he still is to this day, but I imagine he was probably a bit more nimble back in the day, and he was jacked as well, wasn't he?
Oh man, fully.
Like one thing I noticed watching the Deadpool and Wolverine thing, and he's got to be probably 60 nowadays. So no, this is don't blame him. But he was a lot smaller in the Wolverine versus Deadpool. Yeah, Wolverine and Deadpool. Was it Deadpool versus... I can't remember. But but back in the day, in those first 3 Blade movies he was in, he was jacked, man.
Mega jacked.
mega jacked and super good martial artist, and the movies were just good. They were like good, like dark, gruesome, graphic Marvel movies.
Yeah, really good effects, as we were talking about the other day.
For late
really,
90s,
really
that bit
effects.
where he like chops Frost in half and he like and then he's like and he like reforms again. Like, that's pretty good for the day.
Definitely.
I mean, I still think like it's good enough that you can watch it today and you're like, oh yeah. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't like ruin it. You know, like. Yeah, man, I love the movie.
I thought all the vampires like looked so evil as well, and like sounded that speaking like Transylvanian and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so cool.
Especially like almost like the purebloods.
Yes,
which Frost wasn't part of, obviously. But yeah.
Very Dracula inspired.
Yeah,
very, very cool. And I tell you what, man, I cannot wait to watch Blade 2.
Oh man,
I'm really excited.
I think Blade 2 might be the best.
Nice.
It's got Ron Perlman in. You know that actor, Ron Perlman?
Yes. Yeah, I recognise him from The Walking Dead, I believe.
Was he? Yeah, I think he was in The Walking Dead. I haven't seen enough of The Walking Dead.
It also has Norman Reedus in it. Daryl from
Does it?
The Walking Dead. Yeah, I searched it up today because I was like trying to see where I could watch it.
I did not know
apparently
that.
He's in it. So.
I did not know that. I know that like Ron Perlman played like Hellboy, like didn't he, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
he's been in quite a lot of stuff, Ron Perlman. But
is Gangrel in it? Because if not, he should have been. Yeah.
Mate, no, I don't think he is, but yeah, he should have been. Yeah. I don't know, maybe he is, and I just don't realise it. But why do you think he is?
I don't know, because he's almost just like when him in the Brood in
no, yeah, I don't think he is. But he would have been.
He looks like he was like born to play a role in Blade.
I'll tell you what, though, man. Yeah, like the second Blade, you can tell. Like before we do another pod, watch Blade 2, and then we can talk about the next one. What you thought about the next one?
An update.
We can give a little Blade 2 review. A little Blade 2 review after your Blade 1 review. Yeah, man. I think like pros, just give a simple rundown. I think pros of Blade are good story, solid storyline, great lighting, good music, good atmosphere.
Music was great.
Yeah,
soundtrack's really, really good.
Fantastic cast. It doesn't really have any weak points. It's got this whole like dark, like you know,
very gothic.
Yeah, it's very dark, very gothic.
It does remind you of Gotham in a way, doesn't it? The world that they build.
Yeah, similar to obviously like a lot of the classic Batman movies. Yeah, it's got this almost like this dark gothic feel. It really lends itself to the movie, and it would almost be inappropriate if it wasn't.
Yes,
with the subject matter and everything.
Definitely, you couldn't have that in like an MCU type world. It had to be based in this like more gothic, dark, cruel world. So. Really 100%,
good. Man. 100%. Right, we're going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today for another Pandora's Box. We didn't even get to the end of our torture list, so we'll carry that on next time. We had loads of stuff in store for this episode that we didn't get to talk about, so we'll save that for next episode as well. But yeah, we've been talking about... Bullwinkle's been letting us know his thoughts on Blade. We've given a little Blade 1 review. We've talked in depth about, we talked about the Olympics. We talked about psychology, what makes a human being a human being. Who even are we? You know, stuff like that.
One of those episodes where I kind of just even forgot we were doing a pod. And it just felt like just a chat. So.
But I think those are the best ones, man.
Definitely.
Those are the ones that I enjoy the most. Do you know what I mean? Those are the ones I enjoy the most. But yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. We love you, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.